All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Billy Mitchell, Executive Editor of Scoop News Group, and welcome to our panel on validating resilience, a federal perspective on recovery testing. And I wanted to share a warm welcome to my esteemed guest and your expert on today's fireside chat, Ryan Higgins. Ryan is CISO at the Department of Commerce. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Of course. And Ryan, before we get started, I think people understand the mission of the Department of Commerce and sort of the way that IT supports that. But why don't you give us a little bit of background on what you do as the CISO and in your day job at the Department of Commerce?
No, certainly, I appreciate that, Billy. So I think fundamentally, my job is to protect the department's mission. It's a critical mission. It's a worldwide, global mission. So I work hand in hand with key stakeholders, customers, and the like to do just that. It affords me a great opportunity to learn various different operating units, respective missions as well. I think that's always an advantage, particularly if you're trying to protect it. If you don't understand the mission, you can't protect it. And I'm privileged to be in the position that I am serving within the Department of Commerce.
That's fantastic. And I think a great sort of segue into our larger conversation about resilience. So let's start there. And you mentioned you can't protect the mission that you don't understand. And some sort of similarly, with cyber resilience, the goals are to anticipate, withstand, recover, and adapt to cyber attacks. And you can't recover what you don't know about. So let's start there. Setbacks and adversity are a fact of life. So if you don't know what you have, you can't prepare for what to do when bad things happen. So how do agencies automate the ability to understand what's on their network to support resilience?
Sure. So I think a key perspective, first and foremost, is to acknowledge as a leader and accept the fact that things are not going to go right. Things are going to go wrong more so than often. Surely we don't expect things to work out in our favor every day. That being said, it's not uncommon for those who expect things to go right all the time to be unwound at the sight of adversity. So we can't lose sight of the valuable lessons learned during and after times of adversity. Is what truly makes us better. So for me, the key part of this is really keeping in mind this and focusing my time and attention on navigating through and adapting to those changes and challenges while both maintaining composure and focus. Now, automation is a core element for us to protect the department's mission. Absent understanding our environment, we won't be able to prioritize our limited resources to protect against adversaries. We leverage automated tools to the greatest extent of practical, as championed through our partnership with the Women and Men of CISA through the Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation Program. So ultimately, with the rise of AI and integration within our own environments, it's imperative that we harness this capability and continually increase our understanding of our environments. Now, fortunately, Billy, this isn't a new problem. It's just a new application, right? How to support secure implementation of emerging technology. So it all begins with the basics, increase visibility and insight, fill gaps, and reduce risk. That's what we do day in and day out at the Department of Commerce.
All right, well, that's a great start, and it really helps us understand cyber resilience and your larger mission. I know people are a key part of that. The pipeline of talent is so crucial in the public sector. How do you ensure the next person up mentality and apply that to the domain of cyber security and cyber resilience?
Right. Well, quite frankly, this is often overlooked at one's peril. I think the focus must absolutely be on hiring and surrounding oneself with top tier talent because, in my view, there's a considerable difference in productivity and impact between what I would call the A-list players and the B and C players, right? I think with the intense competition for cybersecurity talent, we're always having to ensure our staff realize they're not just an expert in their specific domain. We've got to continually learn, interact with peers in other disciplines, and take those lessons we learned and apply it to our day jobs. Multidisciplinary learning is something that most folks will hear me say time and time again. Now, that being said, Billy, turnover happens, but if you foster the right culture, if you support curiosity, build that accountability throughout your organization, you can remain resilient when faced with change. One of the keys that I have for my team is focusing not just on that technical expertise, which is very valuable, but also the whole skill set, right? Even a technical person needs to know how to write, communicate effectively, manage a product, pitch a new solution, and of course, be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. I think by developing these kind of common skills, you can have someone step in and assist. It makes it easier to have someone in that new role because they only need to be smarter in that particular domain while applying their more generally applicable skills in a new situation. I think the holy grail for any organization is people. I think if you have good people, those A-list people, you're going to run circles around anyone and anything.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think the talent is by far the most important part. I think another important part, and you've sort of alluded to this earlier in the conversation, is really understanding again your infrastructure and those really mission critical or business critical systems, and understanding the mission that the customer has, not just how to secure them. So, how can you leverage again automation to better understand the critical components needed to achieve mission outcomes and assure that they are resilient?
Yeah, I think, what's essential here is contextualizing information. Like within commerce, one of our efforts is to ensure that all assets are tagged within the system. That is, knowing how each asset aligns to the systems. With this, we can better run reports to know if a recently announced critical vulnerability applies to a high value asset, a mission essential function, or a low impact information system, right? That enables us to prioritize and focus our efforts, starting with the HVAs and high impact systems and go down the line. I think alternatively, if we know a certain system is supporting a critical mission, say there's a major economic release planned for the next day, we can take that information we have and discuss the impact of the mission and come up with a plan for how best to address it while ensuring delivery of the mission. I think context is always going to be key. We have limited resources. I think we have to be very smart about how and where we assess and apply those resources given the evolving threat landscape that we face.
So, Ryan, as we sort of conclude our conversation, I think the one thing that I hear a lot, I'm not a practicing CISO or cyber practitioner like yourself, but I hear a lot is that, incidents are inevitable, attacks are inevitable, everyone's going to be attacked, so you have to be prepared for how you respond. So after
Sure.
an incident, pick your flavor, ransomware or something else, how do you rebuild trust with your customers during and after an event, so that you don't have continuing issues or persistent challenges that stem from that?
That's fair. I think my perspective, Billy, is first you have to earn that trust, right? I think that's first and foremost. It's not something that you can afford to take for granted, right? And in doing so, I would put forth one should be having regular touch points with your customers, with your mission owners, understand their ever evolving customer needs, but also to share what's on your roadmap for service and support. If the only time your customer sees or hears from you is when something bad happens, if you argue that, that's indicative of a larger issue. So that being said, you're right, incidents are going to happen. It's a fact of life. And customers will understand this and accept it if your relationship with them is rooted in transparency, right? I think critical to that customer relationship is to tell them what you know, what you don't know, what you're doing to respond, and of course, how they'll be impacted. I think while we all know folks who want to get back to their jobs as quickly as possible, it's important we don't let that drive our decisions, right? I think we've got to follow our playbooks, trust but verify that actions are taken, and be deliberate about bringing systems back into operations following an incident. I think one of the worst things that can happen is if we give the all clear, but it turns out we've missed something in the process. This would, of course, certainly erode our credibility and something that we simply cannot afford.
Well, Ryan, I think my main takeaway, and hopefully the audience takeaway from this, is that cyber security and cyber resilience are very dynamic, complex, topics, and it really does involve a lot of soft skills, whether it's cultural management, people management, that communication and trust that you just talked to. So there's a lot to be taken away from this conversation. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I wish you the best, and really thank you for your time.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate all that you do within the community. Take care.
Thank you.